Welcome to episode 35 of the Everyday Sens podcast. I'm Jack Richardson, joined by Brennan Parks, recording on this Thursday, August 31st. But when everyone's listening to this, it will be September officially. The season's right around the corner. Sens are coming back. They're skating on Canadian Tire Center ice. The paint is on the ice. We're revving up here, Brennan. How are you doing on this Thursday, aka Friday, Labor Day weekend?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I know the Sens posted that video of the painting the ice, and it's starting to ramp up, like you said. I know like Shabbat's back on the ice, and Drew, you were telling me beforehand. So, yeah, it's good to see the players, and I think as September approaches, we're going to see more and more. I think you're going to get pretty much the whole team. I remember last year they all came back early, I think, pretty much, and that was so hype, and then they had the poor start. So, I mean, I guess that doesn't really speak to a whole lot. But I think more than anything, it just shows the kind of dedication of the team. And we've talked about the tight knitted group there. So yeah, I think you're going to see more of that. But this weekend, I mean, I think the rookie tournament is right around the corner. It's coming up. So lots to look forward to for the Sens. I know they recently hired Sean Tierney. We talked about that in the last episode. And I think we can expect more of that news to come out too. The sale process is one more step ahead now. They've confirmed that. So I think, yeah, we're going to get more from the ownership. We're going to get more from the players. And it's hockey season now, right? Like it's coming up. It's October is the month of hockey for the start. And that's only a month away now. So summer flew by like usual. I mean, that's how it always is. But yeah, today we're just going to do another comparison and do a little something else beforehand there. So yeah, we can hop into that if you're ready.
Yeah, so we got a couple things to hit on before we get into who the comparison is going to be. We teased it last week, and then also we've got some point projections for fantasy hockey that were set up. I just started a fantasy football league for the first time ever, so I'm kind of in the fantasy mode. So I'm curious what ESPN has projected for the Ottawa Senators and their points and everything like that. So we'll get into all that. But first, we want to talk about some news that I believe came out just after we recorded on Monday. That the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, it's this new league that's been bought out. They're making a 6-team league, and Ottawa's going to have a team. It's going to be Toronto, Montreal, I believe, Minnesota, Boston. I want to say I'm blanking on the other two. It's basically starting like this original 6 for women's hockey. And let's talk about why it's cool that Ottawa's got a team. Like I know I don't want to say people will kind of maybe just shrug it off and it wouldn't really matter if it wasn't a team in Ottawa versus having a team. It's just good that the league is starting in general. But for me, I think it's great that something like this is starting in Ottawa where there's a lot of hockey history. It's nice that we don't have to pick between Montreal and Toronto if this league gets the right legs. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. I believe they're going to be playing at TD Place. I don't know many other details. There's no name for any of the teams yet. They're figuring out details about draft stuff, I think, because there's a lot of obviously professional women's hockey players right now. But yeah, personally, I was just excited to see this news break.
Yeah, and it is awesome for the city of Ottawa too. But more than anything, like you said, I agree that it's good in general, right, to have this women's league. And obviously, there was a lot going on with the last league there, and it was kind of hard to follow if you weren't like super invested. But a lot of controversy, let's say. So this is awesome for the sport, I think. And I mean, like obviously the men's league gets the most attention, but I think that this and having it, these original 6 teams now, and they've gotten a lot of hype on social media. It's really blown up. I've seen a lot about it. So I think people are becoming more aware. That's a big thing is the marketing. So I think like having these cities and it seems like they've really gone through and picked the cities in which they feel would be, the most marketable and the most attendance wise, like they're going to get the best numbers. So I think that they are going to get a good viewing and that's important, right? And I think we're going to see more of it. The big accounts on social media were posting about it. And hopefully they'll post like some highlights throughout the year too. That's something you don't see a lot of is actually posting the highlights and showing like clips of the league and where to watch the games and stuff like that. So I think like if they start to do more of that, then they're going to get the numbers and this league will be sustainable. But yeah, like you said, I think for Ottawa, it's awesome to see. I think there's a big market for women's hockey in Ottawa. And I know like when I was growing up, a lot of the girls in my school, they played hockey and it's a big thing, men and women, right? It's not just a men's thing. So awesome for the sport, awesome for Ottawa in the region, but more than anything, yeah, just really good for the females of the world and their ability to now kind of play on a bigger stage. And I know too, like there was a cool draft thing where they could like sign up for the draft, so they would put in like the highest level of hockey they've played in their past. It's almost like applying to a job, but like they'd put it in on the website and then they could be picked to like be in the draft and be draft eligible. So that was kind of a neat little thing I haven't seen before. But yeah, I think awesome for really everything involved. There's no downside to this, so really happy to see that for sure.
Yeah, I'm the same way. There were a lot of, girls my age who played and went to D1 college even, right? And honestly, I know there were some professional teams after that, like with the Toronto Six and everything like that, but it was a very unorganized league from what I gather. And this is more of a, I think some people are skeptical who had been following women's hockey before. They're skeptical of how this is all going to work because I think when that other league kind of folded, it was a little bit, controversial. I want to say, I'm not sure why, but I just gather that there was a lot of, uncertainty around this league. But I think just having it in Ottawa is a big deal because, like we both said, we both are from the area. There's a lot of people our age who grew up, and then you get to D1, and then that's kind of it, right? And I know that's obviously still a huge accomplishment and a big goal to make the D1 college and play hockey there. But it's nice knowing, especially when you're a kid, that there's something to idolize yourself for, right? And like I want to see Natalie Spooner and I want to see Haley Wickenheiser, Mary Poulin. I want to see them more than just every 4 years or every year at the Canadian, the World Championship, which ends up just being Canada versus US. Like I want to be able to see them more. So doing that in this kind of league is the best way to do that. So, and another thing for a city like Ottawa, just to have another sports team, like people might roll their eyes at that and say, oh, it's not a huge one because yeah, if they're playing at TD Place, 5,000 capacity or whatever it is, I don't think that's fair at all because you look at the CFL and look, I'm not a football guy, and if I had to pick one, gun to my head, I'm gonna watch the NFL before the CFL. But it doesn't mean that having the CFL in the city isn't a big deal. Like being down at Lansdowne when there's a game on a Friday night in the summer is one of the best things. So on that note too, I'm curious how they're gonna schedule their season, right? Because obviously most hockey seasons coincide with each other. So sharing the arena, and again, this is all reported. I think it's not confirmed yet, but sharing an arena with the 67s, I'd be curious how that schedule is going to work. Like, do they play during the summer? Because I think that'd be smart if you get them playing during August when there's no other hockey on and stuff like that. Like, just little things like that. So it'll be interesting to watch unfold. I'd imagine the Senators themselves will be involved somehow. I know the Sens and like the Leafs for the Toronto team were tweeting out supporting in social media. Like it's not a nothing deal. So we'll keep tabs on that. I don't know what the team name is going to be. I know I was at work this morning just at the station and we were talking about potential names and nothing really good came about to be honest. But we'll keep eyes on that. So that's something we just wanted to touch on because it might have broken right after we recorded on Monday. So that's the PWHL coming to Ottawa 6-team league. We're excited about that one. All right, let's flip to the Ottawa Senators season starting. Like I mentioned, fantasy football for me started and it's next week is week 1. So obviously my eyes now go to fantasy hockey. And I think ESPN put out some point projections for every player. So Brennan, I don't know if we're going to share the screen for it. If you're on the YouTube page, you can kind of follow along here. They've got up to, I don't know, like 9-8 players for the Sens, kind of their top guys, just on the depth chart, which is pretty much all that really matters for fantasy. So let's get into it because I think it's interesting to see what they're projected, and usually point projections are pretty spot on. Like they've got their reasoning for it. So let's begin here, and you can kind of walk us through this because I wasn't smart enough to figure out how to pull up the things on my own.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll pull it up here just for the YouTubers. So we'll just scroll through one by one. So basically, starting off, we got Brady Tkachuk. So obviously this past year, so if you're not on YouTube, it shows their 2023 stats and then their 2024 projection. So obviously 2023, 82 games, 35 goals, 83 points for Brady. Next year, it's projecting 82 games, 39 goals, and 92 points for Brady. So another big step. Like that's not even a little step. That's a big step for Brady Tkachuk. Obviously one shy of 40 goals. And I mean, if he hits this point total, nobody's going to be complaining. I think that pretty much puts him like in a similar pace to where Matthew Tkachuk is and how he's been doing it. Like I know the Locked On guys did that comparison. I think that's kind of similar in the way that Matthew took another step. I don't know. Like, do you think Brady's going to eclipse 90 this year? I mean, I'll tell you why I do is because he's going to be playing with Tim Stutzle, and that's kind of funny to say, but I think that Tim is going to blow up this year again. I think he's going to eclipse 100 points, and then like, I mean, if you're playing with a guy who scored over 100 points, you're obviously going to take another step as well. So I think both of them are going to score more. 92 is a little bold, but like that's a 9-point jump, but at the same time, I think it's very plausible. And I think that Brady, if he's locked in all year, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I think he's going to be 24 and that's just, yeah. How do you feel about that?
You know what? I like the goal total more than I like the points, if that makes sense. I think he's more likely to hit 40 goals than he is to hit 90 points. Because like you mentioned, he's going to be playing with Stutzle, yeah, but I don't know, and we'll scroll down further because Stutzle's the next guy. It's got like, spoiler alert. Stutzle is projected to get 95, so a slight jump for Stutzle over what he had last year versus a pretty big jump for Tkachuk. And the reason I think that's a little bit, surprising is like Stutzle is projected to get 40 goals there. Like I could see them both being neck and neck. Like I don't think I want to say that it didn't feel last year anyway that Stutzle was that much better than Tkachuk. I think they were both neck and neck. Just the only reason I think I see Stutzle getting more points and having a bigger gap is because he is also going to be playing shorthanded, right? So that and he had 3 shorthanded goals last year, had 1 the year before. Like he's a threat offensively shorthanded. And also assists. Like I mean, look, if they both have this stat line, I think that's fantastic. I think a lot of people are hung up on both of them or one of them at least getting 100 points because you feel like that's kind of a benchmark. But I've said it before, like if last season was the career high for both of these guys, that's not a bad thing. And obviously, if it's a significant drop off, it is a bad thing. But I'm satisfied with 80 points for Tkachuk. I'm satisfied with 90 for Stutzle. Like what they showed last season was very, very good. It's just the other guys. So I'm curious to get down to the rest of the list. But these two, for sure, I think 85 plus can be expected ish, like point per game for sure. And yeah, I mean, do you have Stutzle having more points than Tkachuk for sure?
I do, yeah. I think
Okay.
Stutzle. I just think he's like so dynamic is the thing, and I think his age is the big thing, right? Like he's only 21
Yeah.
still, Timmy. So I mean, he's not even in his prime yet. Like I think Brady's obviously kind of now in his prime. I think Timmy is still like to jump like he did this past year at 21 years old is just egregious. Like that's outrageous. So I think yeah, I'm expecting to take even another step. I'm almost surprised they don't have him actually going at more. I guess it's just bold to like throw somebody up to 100 plus points, but like they have him on here playing 3 more games projected and then scoring 5 more points. So he's basically on the same point projection as he was this past year, which I don't know. I mean, he's going to be another year older, right? He's going to be more mature. He's going to have more strength. Like, it's just, I don't know. I kind of expect him to. Now, it will be interesting too, because they obviously played with Giroux, Brady, and Tim for a lot of the year. They might play with Tarasenko for a lot of this next year. So, although I love Tarasenko and I expect him to probably score more than they did last year too if he's playing with these two guys, I think Giroux is more of a point guy than Tarasenko at this point in his career. Like I would expect them to score more points if they're playing with Giroux than Tarasenko, um, which is interesting because obviously this last year they had the stacked top line with Giroux on there. Now they might balance it out a little more. And Tarasenko, again, very good player. I just don't think he's going to be the 80-point guy that Giroux was this past year, right? So yeah, we'll see. But I think those are pretty accurate. I mean, I think Brady's is a little bold, and I don't really understand why he's getting such a huge jump while Tim is not getting a jump considering they play together. But at the same time, it could happen, right? You never know. Maybe Brady finishes a few more on the power play. Obviously, he's known for the whole, expected goals like master and then not actually scoring anywhere near. But yeah, we'll see. And do you have anything else on those two to start
So
us off?
that's actually what I was going to point out. So in my inept technology, I couldn't figure out how to pull this sheet up that Brennan found. I've got the full stats from last year, like shooting percentage, shots, all that. Stutzel shot 17.1% last year. So that's the only reason I'd maybe caution about him getting close to 40 again. The assist is not a problem. I think he'll hit 50, no problem like that. It's just the goals, right? So I think that's when you're an 100-point player, you're putting the puck in the net all the time, and you're also like you're a perfect hockey player essentially, right? Because you're essentially getting 50 and 50, which is outstanding. Um, with Tkachuk, like you mentioned, it's the expected goals. It's all this, and I think last year the reason I think he's probably projected to keep getting more goals is he showed he can finish from distance. I think most of his goals last year, I'd go back and look. I think most of the 35 he got last year were finishing from outside the crease, even though that's where he gets most of his chances from, which is why the expected goals are so high. So you've got Stutzel at 17.1% shooting percentage, and then you've got Tkachuk at 10. So maybe if that kind of just evens out a little bit there with between the two of them, I could see Tkachuk, like I could see them being this close, and maybe that's what they're basing it off of. Now they still have Stutzel at 40 goals, and I'm assuming that would be the team lead unless we've got some other guys below them there. But I'm happy with these projections. Like I'm not upset that none of them are at 100. To be honest, like I think it's not a big deal, and if they both get 100 next year and they miss the playoffs still, it's going to feel pretty empty. I'm not going to lie. I'd rather them get 80 and make the playoffs than get 100 both and miss.
Yeah, and they've both talked about that how like they are as much as they love scoring and individual stats, right? I mean, they've both gotten paid now too. So I think in their minds too, it's more about making the playoffs. It's a team thing, right? It's like if they can commit more defensively and be better in their own end and give up less goals, but also score less points because they're not cheating as much. Like I think that's better, right? That's what you want. Is you don't like obviously if you're earning a contract, it's a little different for some guys, I'm sure, but now that they're both paid, I think like if Brady can really commit to the defensive side of things, and then like even if he scores a little less, I'm content with that if it pushes them to the playoffs, right? If that helps them get in, if they're a better defensive team. Because again, even last year they weren't good enough defensively. They were, among the bottom 12 teams defensively, which is just not good enough, right? So we'll scroll down to the next one here, which is Jacob Chikrin. And this is like the most interesting one on the list to me because they have Chikrin. So last year he scored, obviously, most of the year in Arizona, 48 games, 9 goals, 33 points. Next year, they have him projected in his first full season with Ottawa, 77 games, 16 goals, and 61 points, which is like, woo, that's like, we're talking like Norris numbers now. That's extremely high compared to that. So obviously ESPN is bullish on Jacob Chikrin because to jump 30 points, and obviously the games played plays a huge factor there. And if you look at his projection, he's probably close to that. But I think Chikrin's going to be a dynamic defenseman. And again, we've talked about Sanderson being kind of Ottawa's number one guy. But I kind of think that people underrate Chikrin a little bit. I think he could very well be the number one guy by the end of the year too, if he can stay healthy. And obviously, it's a big if. But like he was the number one candidate on the trade board and on the trade market for like 2 straight years. Like everybody wanted him. We talked about that. How like other fans now look and they're not even like excited about Ottawa's back end, but like how? I mean, Jacob Chikrin was like everybody was offering up first round picks and top prospects and everything else for the guy, and now it's like we're underrating him because he's in a small market in Ottawa, right? So I think that he is that dynamic force. Do I like this point projection though? I don't know. I'm a little iffy on it. I think if he stays completely healthy as the games played is projecting, it could be realistic because again, he's going to be playing, with some very heavy talent up front and then probably a good power play role as well. So I would expect him to probably, produce a fair amount of points. But it is, I consider this one bold. I do. I think that 16 goals, and he is a big goal scorer and got a great shot and stuff. But 61 points too. It's just a little bold for me. I'd be more comfortable around like the 50-point mark. But at the same time, I wouldn't be like blown out of the water if he does score at the stat line projected here by ESPN.
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? So he's ranked third, and I'm gonna guess without looking at the rest of them, that means he's the third highest point total, or no, I guess because Stutzle's below Tkachuk's. Anyway, forget that. Maybe just in terms of fantasy value, he's the third ranked player. Yeah, because Tkachuk is always a beast in fantasy for ESPN's leagues. So the thing that the points to me, yeah, that's pretty shocking. That wouldn't even be a career high or close to career high in goals for Chikrin. It's the games played. The games played is the biggest one that would jump out. We both have said if he plays 60 plus, then that's a bonus, I think. And it's so hard because like players, you don't want to say, oh, they're made of glass. They get injured all the time, but as the longer they play in the league, the history is there, right? And it's hard to, if he plays 77 games, that's such a win for the Sens, such a win, right? So I'd be happy with 77 games and 55 points or 50 points, right? The reason I say I'm curious, I just want to see what Chabot and Sanderson are at. I saw on Twitter recently, like Sanderson's pretty low, I think, for points. So I believe they're projecting Chikrin and or Chabot to be taking most of the power play time. Which again, that's another big question going into camp, right? It's what are the power play units and who is on the top one? Because I think they can realistically make 2 solid units. And I know we had that last year, but I'd imagine they'll go in with the same unit as last year, just sub DeBrincat in from Norris, kind of go with the 2022 look, probably put Chabot on that one. And then you kind of roll Chikrin, Sanderson, Giroux, Pinto, Kubalik, some kind of combination there. So I'm curious. Yeah. But I mean, the assists, like that could happen at even strength too, man. Like, I mean, Chikrin is going to play with Chabot at even strength. That means they're probably going to end up playing with Tkachuk and Stutzle for most of their time at 5-on-5. Like, I think that's a very realistic stat line. If you look at a defenseman like Brandstrom too last year, his numbers were so good at 5-on-5. He created a lot, but the people he was playing with couldn't finish. Like, I think he spent a lot of time with Joseph and Gambrell and all these guys because he was on the third pairing. So he plays with the third and fourth lines mostly, and they just couldn't finish. Like Joseph too had great numbers. He just couldn't put the puck in the net at 5-on-5. So I'd imagine that that's a projection too, that he's going to spend most of his time with the top guys at 5-on-5. That would then lead to a lot of offense, a lot of opportunity. So I think I would, I mean, if we're doing over unders, I'm going to take the under on that just because I don't think he'll play that many games. But hey, man, he could play 70 games and still get 61 points. He's that kind of player. Like, he's that good.
Yeah, he is. And I mean, like I said, I think he has the potential to be their number one guy for sure. But at the same time, I think, yes, the health is very much the most important factor here with Chikrin. And if he's healthy, like I said, he's probably a top 20 defenseman in the NHL, but can he stay healthy, right? I mean, we need him to play at least, I've been saying like at least 60 games is kind of my threshold for him. If he plays less than that, I'm going to be pretty disappointed just because like we did give up quite a bit for him and to get half a season just isn't really good enough. So we'll move on here and keep going through them. But yeah, I think it is ranked by fantasy value. So fourth is Josh Norris. Obviously, 2023 played 8 games, scored 2 goals and 3 points. He's going to be coming back from the injury. Health, obviously, a huge thing with Norris as well, just as it is for Chikrin. If Norris is healthy, he's very much a dynamic player on this team. But again, if he's missing half the season, then that's a huge blow to the roster, especially because he plays center. So his 2024 projection is 68 games, 30 goals, and 50 points. So obviously that's an interesting one because it's a decrease from where he was last year prior to his injured season, where he scored 35 goals. And I'm trying to remember the point total there. Was that 55 points, 66 points, something like that? So yeah, anyways, he's a bit of a decrease here. Obviously, he was kind of coming into camp as the number 1 center last year, and then Tim took that from him. So his role, decreases a little bit. But I'm a little weary of the point total there. I mean, 30 goals, I guess that's fair. He's coming off of missing an entire season, right? So that's kind of can be expected that that's going to, somewhat impact him at least. And then 68 games. So he's on pace for like 35 goals and 55, 60 points. But yeah, I think that's fair. You know what? I'm pretty content with that. I think that's not bold at all. Like if you want to get risky, I'd say more like 35 goals and 60 points. But I think this is safe. That's kind of a safe prediction, and I'm content with that one for sure.
So that does say 68 games, right? That's it's just a little blurry.
Yeah,
for
68 games.
Okay, so 68 games, 30 goals, 20 assists for 50 points. In the 2022 year where he had 35, he played 66 games, had 35 goals, and 20 assists as well. So it's a very safe projection from ESPN. I mean, look, he's the guy though, right? If he can string together 70 plus games and not miss significant time, just a game here and there. I think Timmy played, Stutzle played 78 games. Like he missed 4 games last year. That's doable. You can manage with that if it's a small sample. So anything more than 12 games to me is too many games. So obviously this would have him missing 14. But if he plays 70 plus, I think 35 is realistic. I think that's actually a very fair projection from ESPN. It just really does depend on the power play, I think, because that's where he's going to get most of his opportunity. And it also depends on even strength if him and Drake Batherson can kind of turn it around at 5-on-5. And it's more on Batherson, let's be real here. But I like the idea of him having Giroux there. I think I like the idea of Giroux, Norris, Batherson more than I like the idea of Tarasenko, Norris, Batherson. Just I don't know if 2 shooters would work for Batherson. Like it kind of like that was kind of the scenario they had with Pinto last year. Like I'm not really sure. So to be honest, this is probably my favorite projection so far because it's safe. It's just exactly what he did in 2022, pretty much. Just 5 less goals. So Norris is going to be. So here's the thing. Another question. Like, is that a disappointing stat line for a guy making $8 million? Kind of, right? I think at this point in stage in the game, a little bit, but it depends on those 30 goals because I remember going through it all with DeBrincat last season, and people were debating about when he scores his goals, he's just piling on in 5-0 games, and I think at the time he had like 22, and I went through all of them, and they were all important goals. Like he wasn't scoring just nothing empty netters or 5-0 goals and a 5-0 win kind of thing. Like he was contributing. So I think with Norris, if he can have 30 goals in like 5 or 6 game winners, that's worth it in my opinion. He's got to be that clutch go-to goal scorer. So I like that. I like that projection, I should say, for Josh Norris for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think it's disappointing if he does score that. A lot of that too is, and I mean, again, yeah, for an $8 million player, maybe, but like you said, it really depends on if he's scoring, empty net goals or if he's scoring overtime winners. Like that's kind of the big thing. And Norris did score some big goals, yes. So the other thing with him too is like we do have to keep in mind, and not as an excuse, but like he is coming off of missing an entire year. So I think, if he does have a year where he's not a point per game player or something, and that's, that he wasn't before either. So then I think that is fair. And I wouldn't be upset by that at all. Especially too, if because he's a two-way center. Like if he's serving that kind of two-way role on the second line and playing well defensively, then I would have no complaints about a 50-point season with 30 goals. So yeah, hopefully Norris can stay healthy. But next up is Thomas Chabot. So last year, 68 games, 11 goals, 41 points. Next year, they're projecting 65 games, 9 goals, and 39 points. So actually a decrease for Chabot, which is our first decrease on this whole list, which is kind of interesting. And you know what? I think it's fair. I'm hesitant just because I think that they're going to still enter with Chabot playing the most minutes. And that's just because I think DJ like absolutely adores Chabot and is like, it's ingrained in his mind that this is how it has to be. So I'm a little hesitant because of that. But at the same time, I do think that Chabot's going to lose some ice time. Obviously, he's not been playing 26 minutes a night like he was previously with Chychrun and Sanderson now here. So yeah, I think it's fair to expect this. However, a lot of that is reliant on the power play. So based on this and their projections, they are also projecting Chychrun to play on the first power play and Chabot to play on the second. That's fair to assume because Chychrun has this massive uptick in points, whereas Chabot regresses. So I would assume that's what they're doing. And you know what? Maybe that's fair. I still think they're going to start with Chabot on the first power play. I don't know. I have trouble seeing them like taking Chabot's role and minimizing it right away. Even though I'd probably do it myself. But Chabot, I mean, I'm not expecting a huge season out of him. I'm kind of expecting him to like excel more defensively with the support he has around him. I want him to be more dynamic, yes, but I think the mistakes are the big thing. I think with him, he just needs to limit the mistakes. He needs to limit the turnovers, be able to walk the blue line, like be that possession guy that we know, right? Move the puck, like just don't make mistakes. Don't make unforced errors like we saw last year. That's really the thing with Chabot. So hopefully playing more like 22 minutes tonight will help him do that instead of playing 26, 27, 28. But yeah, this projection is interesting that he's regressing. I think he will be around that 40-point mark, though. That's kind of a fair spot to assume. He's still going to be playing with those top dogs up front. He's going to have a role on one of the power plays, and so I do expect him to be around probably 8 to 10 goals and 40 points is what I'd put him at.
Yeah, it looks like they've just got him playing 3 less games, 2 less points, so more or less the same base as last year, just 2 less goals. Um, I'd be kind of disappointed in this stat line. I just mentioned $8 million for Josh Norris getting 30. Like, is that okay? Is that enough? And I think you were right. It is just based on what his role is going to be. If this is what Chabot provides offensively, so last year, this is why I got the stats from last year pulled up. He had 5 power play goals and 15 power play assists. So half his points came on the power play. So if he's not getting power play time, you got to expect him to start producing at 5-on-5 as well. Like it's a two-way street here. The forwards have to finish, but the D also have to be a part of that. And analytically, apparently, this is what the stats said. He was creating at 5-on-5. He was still a good offensive defenseman there. Could have just fallen victim to stuff that Chychrun did as well, or sorry, the Brandstrom did, like I mentioned. So personally, I'd be disappointed in this stat line. I would, even if he's not leading the first power play unit. I think what the hype around this top 3 D core is that they're deep and all 3 of them can play offensively. We know Sanderson can do it. I believe he's going to be a lower point projection on this, but like all 3 of them should be able to drive play offensively at 5-on-5 and contribute that way. They shouldn't need the power plays, but that's probably why Chychrun's numbers are a bit juiced. They're probably just probably saying that he's going to be leading the power play, which I wouldn't be opposed to. But if he does, I don't want Chabot to just, I mean, look, now if it's 39 points all at even strength, that's a good thing. If he doesn't have power play time, that's a great season. But I would imagine he'll get some power play time. So I would still be disappointed with under 50 points because his career high was 55, I want to say. And it came in that 2019 season where they had Stone, Duchesne, Dzingel. Like that was his best season to date. And since then, he's kind of struggled to find his footing. So like you said, yeah, offensively, it could just be like a wash. Like it's a lateral move, let's say. But defensively is going to be the big question because that's kind of my point. If Chabot is giving you what he gave you defensively last year, and like if he just has the same year, that's not good enough for me. Like I need more from Thomas Chabot, and I think the team does. So it's a bit of an asterisk for me. I don't want to say I like that projection, but a lot of ifs for that one for me.
Yeah, with Chabot, for me, it's just like I don't want to be rolling my eyes at him like 3 times a game. And of course, like I really like him as a player and a person. He did all the heavy lifting for Ottawa. during their rebuild. But at the same time, like last year, again, I'd be disappointed if he played that way again, just because dynamic is one thing, but like the unforced errors is what killed me, and like turnovers in his own end. And you just can't have stuff like that. And I think he just needs to be a more complete defenseman for us to be content. And that's all I'm asking for. So if he has the same stat line or less, but is, making less errors and is a more positive player defensively, then I'm content with that. But yeah, for Chabot, it's just rounding himself out. So we can kind of run through these last five a little quicker if you want, just because those are kind of the big names we just went through. We can talk about Sanderson a little bit too, but yeah. So we're gonna go on to Drake Batherson next, which is last year.
Big one. This is a big one.
82 games, 22 goals, and 62 points. Next year they're projecting 62 games, 19 goals, and 51 points, which is strange. But so he played a full 82 game season. They're projecting him to get hurt, I guess, or suspended or something. Well, who knows? Like, I don't know if you can just project somebody to get hurt. That's kind of random, but 62 games, and yeah, he's producing around the same goal total, and then obviously 51 points. So he's on pace for a better season than he had last year, which is kind of reminiscent to when he got hurt during that Aaron Dell moment where he was like the best player on the team, and then he got hurt and just wasn't the same after that. So very interesting. I want to hear your thoughts on this one, because I'm kind of finding this strange that they're projecting him to get hurt. But yeah, what do you think on this?
I don't know if it's projecting to get hurt. I'm guessing it's just a projection of their career average of games, maybe, because last year was his full entire season, other than the shortened year. But yeah, that's strange. So maybe we just kind of watch this whole segment. There's not much validity to these, but I mean, this one's like, I would be okay with that if he does end up playing 62. Obviously, I wouldn't be okay with that amount of games played, but I think 51 points in that amount of games would be decent for him. But again, it's defensively. Like, he was a minus 35 last year, and plus minus is a bit of a skewed stat, but there does come a point when you're that in the negative and that much in the red, that it's a problem. So I think at 5-on-5 for him is going to be the big deal. So like we said with Chabot, Batherson had 29 points at power on the power play, last year. So 29 of his 62 came on the power play, which again doesn't seem super high, but he led the team in power play goals, and was a part of quite like one of the best power plays in the league. So I think having this kind of stat line for him it's hard to judge unless it's brought with some 5-on-5, prowess, let's say. And I'm gonna guess that if he's ranked 6th with that kind of stat line, it's because he's not projected to get a lot of power play points, because that's also what they projected. It's hard because it's fantasy, so like the rankings kind of skewed too. But stat line, like I could see him getting more than 60 points if he plays a full year. I believe that pace would put him at more than he had last year. So yeah, like I'm expecting to see the Drake Batherson from before the Arundel situation, like you mentioned. Like, I think that's totally fair, because that's the standard he set for himself. He's going in fully healthy now. I keep saying it, he's another X factor, because he was the best player on this team that season until he got hurt. Like, it wasn't even close, really. Everyone was kind of having a down year. He led the way offensively. So I'm expecting that kind of play, that level of play from him this coming year.
I think the biggest thing with Batherson too is it kind of relates to what we said about like Brady and Tim earlier, where it's like, if he doesn't have a huge year of production, but he improves defensively or he commits more defensively, like that's fine. Like, he was a terrible defensive player last year, negative 35, like one of the worst in the league. And you just can't have that again. And we mentioned it before. He came onto a podcast and he spoke about like how he wanted to commit more defensively. Like, he recognized that he was not good enough there last year and he was cheating a bit. And I think like the ankle was still bugging him, so that had part of it. But next year, I think a big key for him, and the big key for him, is to just be better defensively. And if that means sacrificing a few points here and there, so be it. Like, the team needs to be better defensively. You have enough guys to score here on this team that I don't think scoring is going to be the problem. I think it's just defensively. It's not giving up bad goals. It's having everybody buy in your own end, because we always talk about this, is that 5-0 loss to Chicago, where Brady came out and said we were cheating defensively, took ownership of it, and then they continued to cheat defensively and kind of threw the season away. So I think like next year they have to take accountability of that again, but then actually change something. And hopefully that's the message in the room is like Brady and the coaches and everybody is coming out and saying, like, yeah, individual production is huge and key, but listen, you've all got your money now, all right? Like now it's time to commit defensively and kind of like try to win, like it's not about scoring now. It's about, not taking the unnecessary risks and not, overcommitting offensively. So hopefully for Batherson, he can kind of just improve that side of his game. And of course, like 60 plus points for me for Batherson, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I don't want him to even be a point per game player. It's not what I expect. I just expect him to be like a good second line forward, but at both ends of the ice. And last year, he just wasn't that, right? He wasn't good enough defensively. So this whole team needs to be a little more two-way. But yeah, for Drake, 62 games is kind of weird, like you said, but whatever. Like I'm happy with the kind of pace he's on in this projection for sure.
So yeah, Kubalik, 40 points for those not watching on the YouTube. 40 points, 18 goals, 22 assists in 79 games. I'd be thrilled with that, to be honest. Like that's a pretty good stat line for a third line third line winger. Let's say between Pinto, hopefully, and whoever on the right wing, Ridley Gregg, whoever. Like I think he's averaging 20-ish goals a season. Like that's just kind of his benchmark. And you're a third liner giving that kind of production, that's good. He's also a guy to me who can go up and down, like we talked about. The whole DeBrincat situation was about getting a player who can supplement what he did at 5-on-5 essentially, while also adding another piece with that cap space. And they did it with Tarasenko. And I'm really curious to see where Tarasenko is on this list because I'm not liking how far down we're getting here, unless they forgot. Also, Claude Giroux, like there's still some names here, so we're maybe undershooting a little bit of fantasy value for some of the Sens players. For the Sens fans, obviously you guys would all know, but I'm pretty shocked that Claude Giroux isn't up here yet. So I like this stat line. If he can give us those numbers, I would be satisfied with that deal essentially for this upcoming season. No, obviously we get to next summer. It's a different question about re-signing him, whatever it is. But yeah, like I don't know what you think about this, but I'd be happy with that.
I'd be very content as well. And yeah, Kubalik again, we want him to be that two-way guy on the third line. I mean, it's just like he's coming in, and originally before they signed Tarasenko, he was kind of slated into a top six role, right? We expected him to play probably on the second line, and then kind of we would see and go from there. Yeah, he scored 30 once in Chicago, and then yeah, he's been a 20-goal guy basically. So he's been like a middle six forward and someone who can put the puck in the net. He's a good finisher. So I'd be happy with this. I mean, I'm hoping he hits the 20 goal mark, but he's going to be playing probably like you said with Pinto and Greg, or if they can keep Joseph or something, we'll see, right? But regardless of that, I think that like in our comparison series, we've really talked about how that third line is better than most third lines, and I still absolutely think it is. I think Kubalik is a huge part of that. Like signing him or bringing him in and then signing Tarasenko, like that gives them depth, right? And I think that Kubalik is going to do well in a role where he doesn't have to be the guy or anything. He can kind of just focus on his own game. Again, though, the biggest thing with that third line is that I want them to be a two-way line. I don't want Kubalik cheating up front. I want them to be committing defensively. I think that's a big narrative that has to be pushed this year. So, yeah, this is kind of like the same type of pace he was on last year in Detroit. And I mean, he was actually one of Detroit's top scorers. So they were very poor offensively. So that'll kind of be interesting to see too, if he can do a little bit better on a more offensively focused team in Ottawa. But yeah, very content with Kubalik here, and that's all I'm expecting. I am interested to see where Tarasenko and Giroux are. I'm not sure how we haven't seen them yet, but here we go. Wow. Okay. So
No shot. Get out of here.
that's interesting. Yeah. So obviously we're now at Claude Giroux. 2023, he had 82 games, 35 goals, 79 points, a literal career year at like 35 years old. So completely insane. But next year they're projecting 67 games. So, he's getting older. Okay, we can live with that. But then 17 goals and 44 points. So that's like almost half the production that he had last year. In obviously less games, like that's 16 less games or whatever that is, 15 less games. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see Giroux play less games just because like at some point, like we talked about like Patrice Bergeron, these other guys in Boston and these non-aging teams, at some point guys do get older and their body starts to wear. But I don't know, man, like Giroux, even if he played 67 games, I think he'd produce more than this. And again, it's going to be interesting because he's going to be playing probably a lot with Norris and Batherson. So he's not going to have that Tim and Brady line that we had last year. But at the same time, I mean, I just think that Claude is going to produce more than this, like 27 assists. I think he's going to go for more than 27 assists. Like, I mean, he's going to be on the top power play still, or he wasn't last year, I guess. He's going to be on one of the two power plays, which they'll probably roll fairly equally. I mean, at least somewhat. And Giroux, I don't know. I think that he's going to score at least 20 again, 25 and 30 plus assists. But yeah, I'm interested to see what you think on this. And 67 games is kind of notable.
I'm gonna rant here. Okay, so since 2012, 2013, which was a lockout year, like Giroux doesn't miss hockey games. He doesn't miss hockey games in his career. He's a durable player. We talked about that with DeBrincat, how that makes him valuable. I'm gonna go like pretty much his whole career here. Rookie year, 42 games, probably up. He was up and down with the AHL team. First full year, 82 games. Second year, 82 games. 2012, 77, missed 5 games. Lockout year, 48, full season. 2014, 82, 15, 81, 16, 78, 17, 18, 19. He played 82 games. In 2020, he played 69. That's when it got cut short from COVID. Basically a full season. The next year, he played 54, missed 2 games, basically a full season. Last season, the last year before the first one in Ottawa, he played 75 between Florida and Philly. Those 7 games, I'm sure a few of them were being sat because he's a trade value. Even if he didn't, that's still a very good season. That's almost 90% of the games. And then last year, 82. I have no idea where the 67 games is coming from. Absolutely none. So the thing with Batherson, we were like, oh, maybe they're going off career average or whatever. They're just guessing at this point if someone's going to get hurt.
It must be age for him.
Well, then that doesn't explain Batherson's though. It doesn't make sense at all. So games played, I'm not going to focus on, I guess, as much for any of these. The other thing I'm curious about is as soon as Stutzle and Tkachuk get their projections, the immediate drop off is 30 points. And last season, it went Stutzle at 90, Tkachuk at 83, Giroux 79, DeBrincat and Batherson were mid 60s. Then it dropped off to 40. So are you telling me that between second and third place in terms of points on this team, it's going to be a 30-point drop off? I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that. So that's the other thing. Where are Tkachuk and Stutzle's points coming from? Like, yes, they're the 2 best forwards on the team by a mile, but they're not that good. They're not McDavid and Draisaitl. They're not that different offensively from the rest of the team. They're just very consistent and had a very good year last year. So that's shocking to me. It really is. It really is that even if he played 67 games, 44 points is a very disappointing year. And if that's the case, if this happens, if Claude Giroux gets those numbers, the Sens are in trouble. I think that's fair to say. Like, he set the bar last year. So yeah, I don't understand any of these projections. And that's not even me just coming from a Sens fan perspective. It's just there doesn't seem to be a basis to it, which is kind of troublesome. And maybe it's the age for sure. But I mean, like, come on. I don't get that at all, to be honest.
I don't know if they have like an algorithm or if they're just like throwing these in, but regardless, I mean, it's still interesting conversation. Like it is what it is. I mean, Giroux, this would certainly, like you said, be disappointing. I like if he's going from almost a point per game player to being, half like a 0.5 per game player, that's just not good enough. I mean, I do expect some drop off with age, sure, but like not that significantly, because if that happens,
it would be the worst season of his career by a mile.
He would go from the best to the worst, which is like just unreasonable. So yeah, I mean, we can kind of go past Giroux here because that one doesn't really make a lot of sense. I would project him next year. We might do our own little projections too, but I don't know. I'm projecting like if he plays 82 games again or around that, I'd project like 25 to 30 goals and probably like 65 points is what I'm going to put him at. Just because I do think not only the age thing, but like I said, he's going to be playing probably more away from Stutzle and Brady, who are the 2 kind of big point producers. And then obviously I still think he's going to produce, but that's my safe sort of bet on Giroux. So we'll go on to 9, who is Jake Sanderson. And I don't think Tarasenko's on this list because I know who 10 is and it's not him. So Sanderson anyways, we've got 77 games played last year, 4 goals, 32 points. And then next year they're projecting 60 games. So again, with the games played, like expecting injury or I don't know, and only 1 goal and 16 points. So this one makes no sense because we are clearly seeing like the pinnacle of underrating Jake Sanderson here. I think Jake Sanderson could very well lead the Sens in ice time next year. I think they are clearly projecting him to not have a role in the power play, which maybe he doesn't. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I think the power play kind of plays a big factor here because Chychrun obviously had like a huge uptick in points. So then that's obviously he's on the first power play. Shabbat had a regression, so then or around the same, so he's on the second. Sanderson though, yeah, huge drop off here. Obviously, he's playing 17 less games, but he's only producing half the points, and I don't know. I mean, to me, this makes no sense. I think that he and the team is going to be better offensively. I don't really understand how Sanderson's falling off a cliff here. So, yeah, I mean, Sanderson's like arguably the most important player on the team in my mind. And obviously, a lot of his game is defensive, yes, and he thrives with that area. But I think his offensive play and his production is super underrated. And I think like you're going to see it this year. He's so dynamic with breaking the puck out and carrying it into the offensive zone entries, like retrievals, everything, and it all leads to ending up producing. So I do think he's going to score more than he did last year, and I think there's no reason to really think he's going to play less games either. I don't know if they're just guessing and trying to balance it out or what, but what do you think about Jake Sanderson on this one?
Yeah, I don't think that ESPN's watched him enough. I mean, maybe they're projecting some kind of sophomore slump, which is fair because I think a lot of defensemen. I mean, it happened to Mo Seider. He had a down year 2 years ago after winning the Calder. I was just on my phone there trying to look up Owen Power's projection just quickly because I guarantee you it is nowhere close to 16 points. But that's neither here nor there. Like, this is one of those things. I would be disappointed in this kind of season again. Like like the games played would be concerning. One goal would be concerning. This list just to me, other than Tkachuk and Stutzle, just kind of seems like a forced reality check maybe for a bunch of Sens fans because a lot of guys, like we mentioned with Buffalo, but a lot of guys did hit career highs last season, which we got to acknowledge. Batherson did, Giroux career high goals, Tkachuk, Stutzle career highs across the board. Like they could be expected to drop off. But 16 points from a stud defenseman who is not just highly regarded by Sens fans, is highly regarded by anyone who watches this guy. Former NHL players think he's the most underrated player in the league. The 16-point projection is kind of insulting. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'd love to know what kind of basis or analytics go into that because even like surface level basis, every single place that Jake Sanderson's played in his career, the second year he's been there, he's produced at an elite rate. So there's no other reason to assume that he's not going to do that in Ottawa until he does it. So it's a weird projection. It could be power play based, but again, like last season he had 17 points on the power play. So maybe that's kind of exactly what he has there. So I mean, that to me is the only thing I can wrap my head around. One goal would be absolutely insane to me. I think if you go in the month of March alone, Sanderson really took another stride in that month. I think I'd have to go back and watch, obviously, but I just remember like watching every game. He was jumping up in the play more. He was shooting the puck more. I'm way more confident. So yeah, that's the biggest problem I have with any of these projections. Those first two if you're watching on the YouTube, the two that are on our face right now, kind of make me sick. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to get dramatic here, but if those both happen, then the Sens are in deep, deep trouble next season. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think Sanderson, like I said, he's going to be better at 5v5 too. I think that's a big thing is he's going to be more confident. And yeah, when Shabbat was out for the end of the year, he like led the team in ice time. He played a ton of minutes and he did very, very well in those minutes. So I did pull Powers up here. So he's similar. So it must be the sophomore thing because Power this past year he had 79 games, 4 goals, 35 points. Next year they project 71 games, so less as well. 4 goals, 28 points. So a 7-point drop off with the same goal. So I don't really know why that is. I guess it is the sophomore slump thing. And maybe that's a bigger trend than we realize, but whatever. I mean, if they both fall off, they both fall off, but I think both will probably take a step forward.
But still though, that's a 7-point drop off and like a 5-game for Power. And then that's a 17-game drop off for Sanderson and a almost like double, like his points just got cut in half. The other thing about Sanderson, he had 4 goals last year. His shooting percentage was 3. So he was still shooting the puck a lot. That should go up. I think Shabbat was 6.7. Like, that's kind of, I think, what an offensive defenseman has. Chychrun was at 6.7 when he was in Ottawa. Like, you can expect more goals from Sanderson. That's what I'm saying. So, I'm shocked about that. And I know the last one is Pinto then, if it's not Tarasenko. So we'll get into that one before I blow a gasket over here.
Yeah, it is Pinto. So Pinto last year, and again with the injuries and whatever, it's kind of that throws everything off a little bit, but I guess we can look more at the pace. So he had 82 games, 20 goals, 35 points. And then next year they're projecting 60 games. So a 22-game difference 12 goals and 21 points, so only 9 assists. This is weird to me. So Pinto will play a lesser role. He was obviously thrusted into that second line role because of Norris's injury last year. He's going to be on the third line this year, assuming everyone stays healthy. He's going to have Kubalik and probably Greg or Joseph or somebody. And the thing is he'll be playing less minutes, but they're going to be better minutes for him. He's going to be, in a better role for his personal game, and obviously still very young. I think he's going to thrive in that position. Now, he is a two-way guy too, so no points aren't everything for him. We really, again, if he in that third line can be more defensive, that's kind of what I'm preferring than risking things offensively. But this pace here is kind of, I guess, similar to what he was on last year in the sense of it, if you kind of do the math. I guess it's fair to say he'll probably be around if he's healthy for 82 games, like again, around a 15-20 goal scorer with 35 to 40 points is kind of the expectation. I think most people would probably want him to take a bigger step than that just because, he's young. So in development, typically you want guys to take a step forward. It's just like I said, I think he'll be better. Like it'll be better for him in a third line role, but I also think he might not produce a whole lot more just because the opportunity will be a little more limited in regards to ice time. But at the same time, Kubalik had that stat line of 40 points and 18 goals. So like you said before, the points have to be coming from somewhere. And if Pinto's playing with him primarily at 5v5, then I think you'd probably get more than 9 assists, to be honest with you. And so we'll see. What do you think about the last one here in Shane Pinto?
Yeah, honestly, in terms of drop off, and I think Pinto had a really good year offensively last year. He was hot at the start. I think he had 7 goals in 9 games or something like that, and then finished with 20. So not a strong finish to the year. I could see that stat line being realistic. Again, though, it's just the games played for me. I don't understand. The Sens had 5 players last year who played all 82, which is pretty impressive, to be honest, including Batherson, Pinto, who had suffered pretty significant injuries. Giroux was one of them, the old guy. Tkachuk, the way he plays, he had 82. And then obviously Alex DeBrincat. So, I think based on, I'm starting to look at it just in terms of pace. So like if they played a full 82, what does 21 translate to? Just under what he had last year, roughly. Less goals for sure, or fewer goals. So I think I'm okay with that one. Well, as much as it pains me to say. One thing though, hopefully Shane Pinto's agent isn't watching this, or Pierre Dorian's not watching this, because as we are talking right now, that contract is still not done, and we're going to be into September now. So we got to keep our eye on that. We'll ramp up that as training camp gets going. If we get to the point where he hasn't reported to training camp because they also haven't cleared cap yet, like that's a problem. So we'll keep tabs on that. But overall, I think a very questionable projection for most of the Sens players here. Vladimir Tarasenko is not there. We've got Travis Hamonic. They don't have projections for any of these guys, but just kind of their rosters filled out, ranked, fantasy wise, whatever that is. So that was a fun exercise, though. We will definitely be doing our own projections. I think I did one at the beginning of last season for the top 6 forwards, and I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I had Stutzle at 92 points and pretty close to that. So we'll definitely do that. That was a sobering exercise. I'll put it that way. That was different than what I thought it would be. So didn't have time to get into the Devils because that actually took up a lot of time for our show today. So excuse me, we will do a comparison of the Devils at some point, but honestly, maybe we won't. We did the important Atlantic teams. We're going to have a lot to talk about going into training camp here. It's officially September. It's not October yet, but it is September. So Brennan, if you got anything else to add here about those point projections, what did you think about everything that we just went through?
Yeah, I thought they were like half of them were realistic and half of them just felt like they were throwing a number in there to just like guess. But overall, I'd be content with most of those numbers. I think the biggest one that I would be not content with is Giroux. That was just such a fall off. And then Sanderson too. I think Sanderson, just as with everybody in the league, is underrating him, right? It's just like nobody expects him to take another big step, but I think he's going to finish next year as the consensus number 1 guy in the Sens. That's how I feel about Sanderson. Like, I think people would prefer him over Shabbat and Chikrin, which is kind of insane. But I think the best one there that we'd be most excited about is Chikrin. If he puts up 60 plus points and almost 20 goals, like that would be pretty insane. Like that's probably going to, get him Norris votes. Which would be awesome. And then I think, Giroux is the one we really would hate to see him fall off a cliff. But the thing is with Giroux is he's older, yes, but there's nothing pointing to him regressing. In fact, the opposite. Like, he just had his best year. So how is he going to have his worst year? Like, that's not really how things work typically. You never know, obviously, with age. But, like, Giroux has done a great job of adapting his game to match his age. He doesn't rely on foot speed. He doesn't rely on physical strength. He relies on just IQ and being smart and possession and not, not having the excess turnovers. So overall, yeah, I thought that was a fun exercise. But yeah, I'm excited to do our own one for sure and kind of get into our own projections and maybe we could compare them to and see how they vary from ESPN.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Last thing before we wrap up here, obviously we're not both expecting every single player on that list to play all 82 games. Like I said, 5 did last year, and I think that's a pretty high number as it is. But it's just some of the guys. Like you can expect someone to miss significant time. I think that's fair, which is why we needed the Sens to go out and get much better depth, which they did. Excuse me. So it's more just a frustration of how they came up with who was missing and how all of them are missing that many games. Very interesting, formula there, especially Giroux. Like you said, nothing's pointing to him falling off. So until he does, you can't really project that he will, because I think people were doing it last year and the year before and all that. So let's cut it there. That was a long episode. I'm glad we did that with the point projections. Obviously, PWHL team coming to Ottawa in a 6-team league as well. And training camp starting. I'm thinking rookie camp as soon as that, or rookie tournament, excuse me, when that gets going, we'll get a lot more Sens content to break down. So that was episode 35 of the Everyday Sens podcast. We're chugging along here in the off season. So thank you everyone for watching. Click the subscribe button on YouTube. Leave us a like as well. Comment what you think about what we had to say, what ESPN had to say. Subscribe to everydaysens.com. In-depth analysis on highlights and plays, everything during the year. And we will see you all next time.